My wife accidentally called me while my family was reading my father's will. She thought I wasn't on the call and said, "We're getting a lot more if he dies soon, right?" I paused, then asked loudly, "Want me to speed it up for you?" The room fell silent. My name's Daryl, and I live just outside of Raleigh, North Carolina. I've spent most of my adult life working in HVAC, nothing fancy, but I'm damn good at it. The kind of work where you come home with sore hands and sweat-stained shirts, but also with a sense of accomplishment. I married Nadine when I was 24. We were both young, fresh out of community college, and trying to get a handle on life. She became a high school guidance counselor. She had a calm voice, a warm smile, and this way of getting people to open up without realizing they were doing it. I love that about her. I guess I loved a lot of things about her. Once upon a time, we had two kids, Bryce and Shelby. They were our pride and joy, the glue that kept us working hard through the tough years. There were tight months when we lived off canned chili and cheap coffee. I remember when Shelby was born, I sold my old Ford pickup to cover the hospital bills. But we made it work. Always did. Life wasn't flashy. We weren't the kind of family to post vacation pictures from Europe or buy new furniture every year. But we had a rhythm: quiet Sunday mornings, backyard barbecues, and beach trips to the Outer Banks. We were steady, or so I thought. Then my father, Harold, started getting sick. It started with little things: his hands shaking when he buttoned his shirt, forgetting names of neighbors we'd known for years. Parkinson's, the doctors said. Slow, cruel, but manageable with the right treatment. I did what I could. Visited him every other day, fixed up his leaky faucets, mowed his lawn. Nadine came along sometimes, brought him soup or banana bread, but she always had this distant look, like she wasn't really there. I didn't think much of it. People deal with grief differently. Or maybe she was just tired from years of counseling other people's problems. I gave her space. Dad got worse over time. When he couldn't write anymore, I bought him a little voice recorder so he could still tell his stories. He loved to talk about the old days, his army buddies, his first car, how he met Mom at a diner off Highway 70. I started recording his voice just to have it for the days I knew were coming. He passed in his sleep, just like that. Peaceful, the way he wanted. I sat with him the night before, held his hand, told him everything was taken care of. I left the hospital that morning with a hollow chest. Didn't cry right away. That came later, when I found an old note in his wallet with my name and a phone number written in his shaky handwriting. 2 weeks later, we gathered to read his will. My siblings: Jarvis, my younger brother who'd moved to Phoenix to chase some tech dream, and Camille, my older sister who worked as a nurse at WakeMed, met me at the lawyer's office in downtown Raleigh. It was a humid afternoon, the kind that makes your shirt cling to your back even in the shade. The office was old-fashioned. Oak furniture, dusty blinds, a framed diploma from Duke Law. We sat around this heavy wooden table, waiting for the lawyer, a quiet man named Mr. Kinsey, to begin. The air felt thick with unspoken tension. Grief does that. Everyone processes loss in their own way, pretending they're okay when they're anything but. Right before Mr. Kinsey started reading, my phone buzzed. I saw Nadine's name flash on the screen. Thinking it might be something urgent, I answered quietly, placed it face down on the table, and left it on speaker. That's when I heard her voice. "We're getting a lot more if he dies soon, right?" It cut through the room like a blade. For a second, I thought I'd misheard. Maybe it was the connection. Maybe she was talking about something else. But no, it was her voice. Calm. Almost hopeful. My heart dropped into my stomach. Everyone turned and looked at me. I picked up the phone slowly, stared at it, and then said, clear and loud, "Want me to speed it up for you?" The room went dead silent. Jarvis looked at me with his mouth half open. Camille blinked like she was trying to wake herself up from a bad dream. Mr. Kinsey cleared his throat awkwardly and tried to focus back on the will, but the air had shifted. The grief was still there, but now it was laced with something darker: betrayal, disbelief, disgust. I left the office without speaking much. The details of the will barely registered. Dad had left equal shares to the three of us, a few specific items to his grandchildren, and the house to be sold and divided. A man who never chased wealth but managed to die with his dignity and a bit of savings intact. I drove aimlessly after that, passed by old gas stations, diners we used to eat at, schools where I'd fixed air conditioning units. When I got home, Nadine was sitting on the couch with a glass of white wine, the TV playing some home renovation show. She didn't look surprised when I walked in. "You heard that, huh?" she said, not even turning her head. I stood there in the doorway for a long time, staring at the woman I'd spent over 2 decades with, the mother of my children, the person I thought would grow old with me. "What did you mean?" I asked finally. She sighed, set her wine glass down, and turned toward me. "It wasn't like that." "Then explain it." "I was talking to Maya. We were just going over the numbers." "I didn't mean anything by it." "Numbers?" I said, my voice rising despite myself. "You were hoping my father would die faster so you could get your hands on money?" It wasn't hope. It was desperation. That was the first honest thing she'd said. Over the next few days, the truth unraveled. She had racked up nearly $50,000 in credit card debt. bought into some sort of holistic wellness franchise that never took off, maxed out our lines of credit, drained her retirement account. And all the while, she kept smiling, kept pretending everything was fine. You could have told me, I said, sitting across from her at our kitchen table, hands clasped tightly. We could have figured it out. I thought I could fix it on my own, she said. Then it spiraled. And the hotel in Wilmington? Silence. Maya's birthday. The words came out too quickly, too rehearsed. I didn't need to ask again. It was more than money. It was a secret. Lies. A slow erosion of trust that I hadn't noticed until it collapsed beneath my feet. I moved into the guest room that night. The kids called, sensing something was off. I told them we were working through things, but they knew. Shelby cried. Bryce tried to play therapist, told me not to throw away a marriage without trying. But deep down, I knew it was already gone. I filed for divorce quietly. Told her I'd keep it civil if she didn't fight me on it. She nodded and didn't argue. Maybe she was relieved. Maybe she'd already checked out years ago. Since then, I've been living alone in a small apartment off Glenwood Avenue. I see Shelby when she's home from college. I call Bryce every Sunday. I've picked up old hobbies, bowling, fishing, and learning to cook more than just frozen pizza. I even started journaling. Not because I think I'm a writer, but because sometimes getting the words out is the only way to make sense of them. Sometimes, late at night, I still hear her voice in my head. We're getting a lot more if he dies soon, right? It wasn't just a sentence. It was a revelation. A crack that exposed everything beneath. And I don't think I'll ever hear the same tone in someone's voice without wondering what they're hiding underneath. The days turned into weeks. The sting didn't fade. It just dulled into a quiet ache that settled into my bones. It followed me like a shadow. At work, I'd catch myself zoning out in the middle of wiring a thermostat or checking refrigerant levels. I stopped taking side jobs. I didn't have the energy to deal with people's small talk or polite conversations about the weather. My coworkers noticed. One of the younger guys, Clay, offered to grab a beer one Friday, but I turned him down with a half-hearted excuse. I wasn't ready to talk, and definitely not with someone who still thought life was clean and easy. The apartment was small, but enough. One bedroom, an outdated kitchen, a living room with a lumpy couch I bought off Craigslist. I brought a few things from the house, mostly my tools, some photo albums, and Dad's old recliner. I left Nadine with the rest. She didn't fight me on it. Maybe she wanted a clean slate, too. There were moments I hated her. I'd be brushing my teeth or folding laundry and suddenly remember something about her laugh during a movie. The way she used to sing while doing dishes, and then, like a punch to the gut, that voice would replay in my head. We're getting a lot more if he dies soon, right? I kept replaying that call in my mind. I wondered if she ever regretted saying it. If she lay in bed at night thinking about how easily the mask had slipped. Or maybe she'd moved on. Maybe she was out there now, smiling over coffee with Maya, making plans for another doomed business venture, or meeting someone new who didn't know about the wreckage she'd left behind. One night, I got a call from Camille. She was worried about me, said I sounded different, asked if I was seeing anyone. I told her the truth, I wasn't ready. I still had too much anger, too much confusion swirling around inside. You can't stay in that place forever, Daryl, she said gently. It'll eat you. I'm trying, I told her, but I feel like I'm walking through fog. I get it, she said, but the fog doesn't lift if you stand still. That stuck with me. I started walking more. Not for fitness, but just to feel something. I'd walk around the park near my apartment or down Glenwood Avenue at dusk when the streetlights flickered on and the city got quiet. I found comfort in routine morning coffee, work, walking Hank, cooking dinner. It was simple, but it was mine. One evening, I came across an old friend at the grocery store. Mona, a woman I used to know from church. She had this warm, no-nonsense energy. We got to talking. Nothing deep, just small-town stuff. But there was something comforting in her presence. No pressure, no pity, just shared history and mutual understanding. We started meeting for coffee on Sundays. She'd tell me about her grandkids, her volunteer work, the classes she was taking at the community center. I'd listen, and slowly, I started talking more. I told her about Dad, about Nadine, though not everything. Just enough. She didn't judge. She just nodded, sipped her coffee, and sometimes said, people don't always show you who they are until they think you're not watching. There was one morning it had rained all night, and everything was damp and quiet when I finally broke down. I was sitting in my truck, parked in the lot outside my apartment, hands on the steering wheel, and I just started crying. Not the kind of crying you can hide. The kind that comes from somewhere deep, somewhere you didn't know still hurts. It wasn't just about Nadine. It was about my dad. About years spent trying to hold everything together, pretending things were fine. About the betrayal, yes, but also the exhaustion. The realization that I'd spent most of my adult life building something that fell apart in a single sentence. I took the rest of the day off work, went home, sat on the floor with Hank, and let the silence wrap around me. I started going through Dad's old recordings. His voice, shaky but strong, telling stories from his youth. I made a habit of it one tape a night. They grounded me, gave me something to hold on to. He once said, In one of the tapes, when people show you who they are, don't waste too much time asking why. Just decide whether or not you can live with it. That hit me hard, because I had spent weeks, months, even asking why Nadine did what she did. Why did she say what she said? Why did she look me in the eyes for years while hiding debts and lies? But maybe the why didn't matter as much as I thought. She showed me who she was. Now I had to decide who I was going to be, now that I saw it clearly. There were still days I felt the weight of it all, like a coat I couldn't take off. I'd catch myself drifting into memories sitting on the porch with Dad as the cicadas buzzed around us, listening to him talk about the war, about Mom, about how he wished he'd taken more chances. He used to say, "Life's short, son. Don't waste it being polite to people who'd walk over you if you let him." That line echoed in my head now more than ever. I didn't speak to Nadine for a while. The divorce process was moving quietly through the courts. Our lawyers handled most of it. The kids, God bless them, tried to stay neutral. Shelby came home for a weekend and brought me a pie she baked herself, peach, Dad's favorite. She said Mom seemed off, like she was trying too hard to act normal. I told her to be kind but cautious. She was old enough to understand things weren't black and white. One night, Bryce called me out of the blue. "You okay, Dad?" he asked. "Getting there," I said. He was quiet for a moment. "I keep thinking about everything," he said. "About Mom. What she said. I still can't wrap my head around it." "Me neither," I told him. "Do you think she meant it? Like, really meant it?" I didn't answer right away. "I think she meant what she said at that moment," I said finally. And that's enough. That conversation stayed with me. I kept turning it over in my mind, trying to make sense of a person I'd shared a life with. Someone I'd trusted to raise my children, to grow old beside me. How do you unlearn a person like that? How do you untangle yourself from 2.5 decades of shared memories? Mona kept inviting me to little things, a local art show, a flea market, a Sunday morning walk through the Arboretum. I never said yes right away, but she didn't mind. She just kept showing up with patience and warmth, never pushing. One afternoon, we sat at a small table outside a cafe. The sun was soft, the way it gets in early spring, and the trees were starting to bloom. "You seem lighter today," she said. "Do I?" I asked. She nodded. "You're not carrying it all on your shoulders like before." I chuckled. "I guess I'm just tired of being angry." "That's a good start," she said. I didn't know what Mona wanted from me, if anything. Maybe she just enjoyed the company. Or maybe she understood what it was like to rebuild yourself piece by piece. She was a widow, lost her husband 6 years ago. But she talked about him with love, not regret. I admired that. I wondered if I'd ever talk about Nadine the same way, with some kind of peace. The hardest part wasn't the betrayal. It was realizing how much of myself I'd given without noticing. The little sacrifices. The times I put her needs ahead of mine. The dreams I shelved because they didn't fit the life we were building. There was a box I hadn't opened since the move. It sat in the corner of my bedroom, taped shut and gathering dust. One evening, I finally pulled it out. Inside were old letters, birthday cards, and family photos. Some from when the kids were little, others from when Nadine and I were still just figuring each other out. I found a note she wrote me on our 10th anniversary. "You make me feel safe in a world that's always changing," it said. I stared at that line for a long time. Maybe she meant it back then. Maybe she didn't. But it was real to me at the time, and that had to count for something. I put the note back in the box and closed the lid. Not ready to throw it out. Not yet. But ready to stop clinging to it like it defined me. Work picked up again in early summer. The AC calls came pouring in, as they always did when the southern heat settled in. I started taking more jobs, even offered to mentor one of the younger techs. Felt good to be needed again, to focus on something outside of my own head. One afternoon, while fixing a rooftop unit at a strip mall, I looked out over the parking lot and saw a couple arguing near their car. I couldn't hear what they were saying, but I recognized the body language, the tired frustration, the way one person was leaning back while the other pressed forward, desperate to be understood. And I thought, we all carry things we don't say out loud. Some of us bury it. Some of us let it rot until it poisons everything around us. And some of us, we try to face it little by little. That night, I cooked myself dinner: grilled chicken, mashed potatoes, and green beans. Nothing fancy, but the kind of meal that felt like home. I played one of Dad's tapes while I ate. He was talking about the time he proposed to Mom. Said he was so nervous, he dropped the ring in a bowl of clam chowder. I laughed out loud, alone in my kitchen, and it felt good. Hank wagged his tail, watching me like he understood. I reached for my glass of water and said to the empty room, "We're doing okay, huh?" And for the first time in a long while, I believed it. Everyone in the room froze. My wife's voice, once so sweet to the family, now echoed in the silence like a betrayal wrapped in greed. My mother's hand trembled as she clutched the edge of the will. My siblings stared at me, then at the speakerphone, disbelief twisting into rage. I let the silence settle like dust after an explosion. Then I calmly said, "Don't worry, sweetheart. I'll make sure you get exactly what you deserve." Click. I hung up and turned to the attorney. "Let's continue." The rest of the will was read, and afterward, I quietly informed the family that I'd be filing for divorce immediately. But I didn't stop there. Over the next few weeks, I made sure her recorded words preserved forever on that call were submitted to my lawyer. Not just for the divorce, but to contest any claim she thought she might have had to my inheritance. Turns out, courts don't look too kindly on people openly wishing for someone's death for money. I took back everything I'd ever put in her name. The apartment? Gone. The car? Gone. The joint accounts? Closed. She walked away with nothing but a lesson and a reputation that followed her into every room she thought she could manipulate next. Me? I walked away lighter, freer, and with a family that saw exactly who she was before it was too late. Sometimes, the best revenge is letting the truth speak for itself and making sure the right people are listening. The news of the call spread like wildfire. In our family, secrets rarely stayed buried for long, especially ones that dropped like bombs in the middle of something as sacred as reading a parent's will. People often think betrayal comes in loud, messy explosions, but hers came in the form of a casual whisper, just one wrong sentence spoken at the wrong time, though maybe it was the right time. She revealed herself, and the universe simply handed her the mic. The divorce was swift. My lawyer, after hearing the recording, asked only one question. Do you want to go nuclear or clean? I smiled and said clean, but unforgettable. We filed on the grounds of emotional betrayal and malicious intent. With the audio as evidence and a strong paper trail I hadn't realized I'd been building over the years, texts, financial records, her insistence that I sign certain things over because we're a team, the judge didn't hesitate. She lost any claim to my inheritance and was forced to return every asset that had been in my name. She tried to play the victim publicly at first, cried online, made vague posts about being used, and left with nothing. But the internet has a funny way of turning on people when receipts come out. And they did come out. My cousins shared the story, friends backed me up, and suddenly the girl who once played the charming partner at family dinners was the cautionary tale in dinner table conversations. Last I heard, she moved back in with her sister in a different state, rebranding herself on social media and trying to pretend like none of it happened. But she left a trail she can't erase. As for me, the months after the fallout were quiet but healing. My relationship with my family grew stronger. My mother, who had once looked at my wife with fondness, apologized tearfully for ever supporting her. She fooled us all, she said. But not anymore. I used my share of the inheritance not for revenge, but for building something better. I bought a house in the hills, not massive, but peaceful. Started volunteering more. Focused on my work, my passions. I even took a solo trip to Iceland, somewhere I'd always wanted to go but never had the freedom to. Freedom, that was the real inheritance. The chance to live life unshackled from manipulation, disguised as love. Funny thing is, people expected me to fall apart after everything. But in truth, I'd never felt more whole. Being blindsided like that showed me how strong I was. How clear things become when the fog of false affection lifts. Years later, I ran into an old friend who knew everything. He asked if I ever missed her. I laughed. Not her, I said, but I'm grateful for what she gave me. And that's the thing about betrayal. It stings like hell, but if you face it head on, it leaves you with something precious. And sometimes, that's all you need to begin again. So, in the end, I didn't seek vengeance through cruelty. I let her words do the heavy lifting. I let karma walk through the front door, while I walked out the back into something better. She lost the game. She didn't even know she was playing with the wrong opponent. And I simply kept walking, head high, heart intact, future wide open.